let's talk about Triangle of Sadness. Triangle of Sadness. This is a comedy written and directed by Ruben Östlund. 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 Östlund, and the O has like the two little dots over it. So Östlund. I don't know, dude. Triangle of Sadness. So this has been nominated, I believe, for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, which are on the 12th. So I figured, let's give this a look-see. At first blush, I was like, I hear the title and I'm like, oh man, that sounds like some fucking 4-hour drama where it's gonna like maybe save it for your mama type of thing. And instead, I'm happy that I decided to watch it. It is available for streaming for free on Hulu if you have a subscription. I don't know that I would have paid to rent this if it was like full price. Maybe not. But I was glad to see that it was available for streaming on Hulu if you have a subscription. So here's the synopsis if you're not familiar. In Ruben Östlund's wickedly funny Palme d'Or winner, social hierarchy is turned upside down, revealing the tawdry relationship between power and beauty. Celebrity model couple Carl, played by Dickinson, and Yaya, played by Charlbi Dean, rest in power, are invited on a luxury cruise for the uber rich, helmed by an unhinged boat captain, played by Woody Harrelson. Fuck yeah. What first appeared Instagrammable ends catastrophically. Butchered that. Leaving the survivors stranded on a desert island and fighting for survival. Rated R for some sexual content and language. If you're not familiar with Ruben Östlund, he directed 2017's The Square, starring Elizabeth Moss, which was about a prestigious Stockholm museum's chief art curator finding himself in times of both professional and personal crisis as he attempts to set up a controversial new exhibit, and Force Majeure, which came out in 2014, about a family vacationing in the French Alps that's confronted with a devastating avalanche. That movie, if it sounds familiar, was remade in America as Downhill, starring Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, which I have not seen, but everyone has said that it sucks. But, the critics can be finicky like that. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll watch both back to back and we'll compare and contrast, okay? This was released, had a limited release on October 7th, 2022, and then it released on streaming November 22nd. Premiered at the Cannes Film Festival right around Memorial Day of 2022. And as we mentioned, it won the festival's Palme d'Or. And it received an 8-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival, which I'm sorry. I don't care if there's video, proof, evidence. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe that anyone can stand and clap for more than 2 minutes at a time. Sorry, I call bullshit. Every time I've seen that, every time I hear that, I go, nope, fake news. I've tried, we did it over the summer. When we heard, I think it was Brendan Fraser. After Brendan Fraser got a standing ovation for, I don't know, or maybe it was Ana de Armas got a standing ovation that was 13 minutes. I think Brendan Fraser got one that was 13 minutes. And it's just all right, let's just try and recreate it. Let's just put on the timer and we'll say we're going to clap for as long as we can before we get tired. And I'll tell you what, your hands go numb. Your hand, I don't know, unless you're doing a very, I think maybe I could do that for 8 minutes. I don't know that I can do more than that for 8 minutes. If you really clapping, your hands go numb and eventually I think they start to bleed. As I mentioned, this movie received 3 nominations at the 95th Annual Academy Awards. Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay. And all valid after seeing this movie. Fuck yeah. The box office gross was only $4.5 million. It does have a fairly lengthy runtime, 2.5 hours. It was distributed by Neon. Had a budget of around $16 million, and the box office, I guess this is global box office, pulled in $24 million. So it made back some money and then some. And maybe it'll make some buku dollars in home video rentals and whatnot, streaming. The cast: Harris Dickinson, as we mentioned, as Carl, Charlbi Dean as Yaya, Dolly de Leon as Abigail, so good. Zlatko Burić as Dimitry, also awesome performance. I will say, before we get to the rest of the cast, the Carl and Yaya opening section, somewhat rough. I guess if you're a little, it might test your patience a little bit. But if you can get through that, you are handsomely rewarded. Pun intended, because they're models, and I just said handsome. Iris Berben as Therese. Vicki Berlin as Paula, who I thought, I mean, all the characters pretty much were so great in terms of just look, style, feel, depth, just like awesome. Henrik Dorsin as Jarmo, Jean-Christophe Folly as Nelson, Amanda Walker as Clementine, Oliver Ford Davies as Winston, Sonny Mellis as Vera, and Woody, my man, Harrelson as the captain in such a great performance. I have to say this. If Woody Harrelson isn't in this movie, I'm not sure that I watch it. Like when I was first kind of checking it out, someone had mentioned it and I'd seen it and I was like, I'm not too familiar with this. And I did, kind of Rotten Tomatoes, Wikipedia, whatever. And I see like, what is this? And then I see Woody Harrelson. And I was like, all right, okay. So kudos to them for casting him. So the plot. So the story is broken into 3 parts. The first part is Carl and Yaya, as I mentioned. The second part is the yacht. And then the third part, Spoala is the island. The Carl and Yaya, the first part. So Carl and Yaya are dating. Carl's a model. I guess Yaya looks like a model, but is more of an influencer. Or yeah, she's a model and influencer. And so they're dating. And Carl resents Yaya for expecting him to pay for meals, even though she earns more than he does. They often bicker about money and gender roles. Yaya admits that she's in a relationship with Carl for the engagement it earns them on social media and that she seeks to become a trophy wife, but Carl declares that she will come to love him. A lot of emotions. Like, even though that section, that part runs a bit long, it does make you feel things. I'll say that. Because it is like the guy is expected to pay, even though the guy's earning less. But we do find out the reason why Yaya is not paying is because her card keeps getting turned down and rejected. So it's like, even though she's making more, she's spending more possibly, and to the point where she's reckless with her money. And that would explain why, she wants to be a trophy wife, because she's like on her own, not able to provide for her lifestyle. But that scene with the bill made me uncomfortable. It did make me feel things. And it is interesting how that whole relationship ended up panning out, which we'll get to in a little bit. But part 2 is the yacht. Carl and Yaya are invited on a luxury cruise aboard a super yacht in exchange for social media promotion. And one of the I know I say a lot of things, but like, I can't picture myself being in that kind of relationship, no matter how hot the woman is, where it's like you are just constantly. Well, I say that now, but like, maybe I would trade for that, especially when the dude's also a model. It's like, but I feel like that would get old quick, where it's like you're constantly having to take pictures of your girlfriend. Like, and even that, like, how is influencers and social media I'm so close to deleting everything. I really, 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 really want to, but it's also, I feel like social media is my only avenue to possibly advancing and moving beyond where I'm at. So it's like a necessary evil. It's like, I know what I have to do and how to use social media. I just refuse to do it because it feels gross. For instance, they're at the dinner table or the lunch table or whatever, and Yaya is holding up a fork with like a spaghetti all dripped down. She's like opening her mouth like, and doing something like that. And Carl takes the picture, and then she puts it down and pushes the plate away. And Dimitri's like, you're not going to eat the pasta? And she's like, what? And she's like, you're not going to eat the pasta? She's like, no, it's just for the Instagram. She's like, I'm gluten intolerant. He's like, oh, okay. And so that's how they start to hit it off. And that's how we find out that Dimitry is the king of shit. The king of shit. So among the wealthy guests are the Russian oligarch. I don't know how to pronounce that shit. Oligarch. Yeah. Dimitry and his wife, Vera. But then there's a girlfriend too, right? I did not understand that dynamic at all. I mean, I guess I do understand it, but it would have been nice to get a little confirmation, because it's like, okay, it's for me, it looks like this is your wife and then this is your mistress, and the wife is okay with the mistress because you're rich. Got it. Okay. Elderly couple Clementine and Winston, who manufacture weapons, which I thought was a interesting, nice twist, where it's like this sweetest, nicest old couple who appear to be very much still in love, and they're talking about like how they make grenades and missiles and all that stuff. Therese, who wheelchair user, only capable of speaking a single sentence in German following a stroke, which I think it was like in the Wolken, in the Wolken, which is no, up in the clouds, I believe. Which that would have also been nice. I don't know that they ever explained that. I guess the husband, because remember when we first meet Therese, she's at the table by herself in the wheelchair, like her husband's in the crapper or whatever in the restroom, and Clementine and Winston are on the other side, and they're trying to talk to Therese, and Therese is just like, she's like getting very apprehensive because she knows, like, I can understand you, but you will not understand me because I can only say 9 in the Vulcan. So, does the husband come back from the restroom and then explain it? He explains like, oh, she had a stroke. She can only say these words, but we never find out why those words, I guess. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think there was any confirmation of like, oh, the reason why she's saying up in the clouds is because blah, blah, blah. Jarmo, who's a lonely tech millionaire who flirts with Yaya. So one of the parts, so this is very interesting because they have the passengers, right? The guests, all of which are super wealthy and rich. And then you have the staff or the crew led by Paula. And Paula has like the group meeting, the staff meeting, crew meeting, and is like, hey, whatever these guests want, you say yes. We don't say no ever. And why do we say yes? And then you start chanting money. And then you kind of, I think from there you go down a level and you start to see like the custodial staff, some of the ones that are not so much customer facing crew and staff that are like janitorial, cleaning staff, engine room, the people that are kind of like they try to hide, and they're like not as visible and customer facing. So then we have, I guess Vera, the wife, gets one of the crew members to agree to go swimming. And then before you know it, it's like the guests want the entire staff and crew to go swimming, even the kitchen staff. And so the head chef is like, the food's going to go bad, but okay, cool. And so they all go swimming. And then that's when you have the captain's dinner, which up to this point in the movie, Woody Harrelson is kind of holed up in his cabin in his bedroom and refusing to come out. And it's obvious that he's doing some shady shit in there, possibly drinking drugs. We don't know. And because Paula keeps coming and knocking on the door. But so the captain, Woody Harrelson's character is named Thomas Smith. And so Paula is able to get the first mate, I forget what his name is, to come and get Thomas out of his cabin, sober up, and attend the captain's dinner. And while the captain's dinner is going on, there's a storm. And I got to tell you, this scene, the captain's dinner, definitely one of the best scenes of, I'll say 2022, because it came out in 2022, even though I saw it this year. Like one of the best scenes I've seen in a long time. Like, they're going through a storm, so the boat is rocking big time. Like, things are falling, smashing, glass. Combine that with the fact that, the sound effects that they use during this dinner, where it's like very like fancy items, but mostly seafood. And so you have a lot of oysters and clams, and they have them, you can hear them slurping. And the way it's shot and the sound effects that they use, it's almost gross and disgusting. Like, it's almost like they're setting the tone. And it's almost as if they're saying, you think this is gross and disgusting? Hold my beer. Or in this case, hold my bottle of Veuve Click. I guess that's it. Veuve is not even like considered classy or expensive for these people. Ace of Spades. Does that fit the bill? I don't know. Hold my Ace of Spades. But because of the violent nature of the rocking of the boat, the turbulence and the turmoil, combined with the fact that the food spoiled, as the head chef said when he's like, they want us all to come swimming, well, then the food's going to go bad. And they're like, all right, let's go. And so, it starts off slow, where it's like one person kind of starts feeling seasick, and they're like, I think I'm seasick. And then that person starts vomiting, and then another person starts vomiting, and people are stumbling and falling and vomiting all over the place. All over the place. It was so goddamn funny. Violently seasick, vomit, diarrhea, the food, panic everywhere. People are now putting on like life vests because the boat is rocking so hard. And you have the one scene of Vera, who is now in her like Spanx, like she's all dressed, like stripped down. Like, you see the one guy, I forget who it was completely naked on the toilet, who's like on the toilet, but also vomiting. Which reminds me of my first ex-girlfriend, whose birthday it is today, who got dysentery. Isn't that where it's coming out both ends? She got it on a boat. So interesting how that all ties together. Wow. And then that's when Thomas, Woody Harrelson's character, the captain, he ordered a cheeseburger. And I guess because he ordered a cheeseburger and it's not raw because they cook it right, that I guess he did not get seasick. I don't know what Dimitry had. I can't remember Dimitry had. I guess he just drank. I don't think he ate. But most everyone else had raw seafood, so they were like puking and shitting everywhere. So funny. And so Woody Harrelson and Dimitry, who made his fortune in fertilizer, that's why he calls himself the king of shit, they get into a debate over communism versus capitalism. And the twist here is that Woody Harrelson's character, who's American, is a self-proclaimed Marxist who keeps quoting all these, has these quotes about communism. And then you have Dimitry, who's a Russian oligarch, but who loves capitalism and is making all these quotes about capitalism. He's quoting Ronald Reagan, and Woody Harrelson's quoting Marx and Lenin and all that stuff. And so they go like, they just have like an old-fashioned, and man, do I miss moments like that with friends where it's like one-on-one, and like there's no reason to be drinking, and you just keep going shot for shot or taking slugs or whatever, playing stupid drinking games one-on-one to the wee hours of the morning for no reason at all. So him and Thomas and Dimitry are doing that, debating communism versus capitalism, and they get a hold of the intercom. And that is like the climax of the scene, like the peak of the scene is them, like Dimitri, like, oh, we're all going to die. You're all going to die. And just saying that into the intercom, drunk as fuck, as everyone's just slipping and sloshing in their own filth, like, vomit and diarrhea and whatnot. Like the sewage comes up through the toilets. Power goes out. Like it's disgusting. But at no point did I feel the need to puke or like vomit like I did during Cocaine Bear. Again, I mentioned Cocaine Bear. Oh my God. It was just like comical, just super funny shit. But yeah, that scene was just priceless. So good. And, Woody Harrelson tells Dimitri that he wrote a book. And so he's like reading excerpts from the book, and Dimitri gets the intercom, puts it in, and he's like, no, you gotta tell the people. And so apparently, as Woody Harrelson's reading, it goes out over the intercom, but it goes out the loudspeakers, the speakers on the boat, and that's when they pull back and you see like these pirates that take notice and are about to attack the boat. And so the pirates end up tossing a grenade onto the cruise ship, and Clementine picks it up and turns to Winston and goes, "Is this one of ours?" And Wilson's like, "No," and then so the grenade goes off, blows up half the boat, sinks it, and then that takes us to part 3, the island. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where a character who we are not fully, who's kind of been, I guess we've seen flashes of here and there, takes on a more prominent role in the movie, Abigail. And I guess she was head cleaning lady, right? She headed up the cleaning staff. So there's a group of survivors, right? Clementine Wilson, they didn't make it. And then a bunch of other people didn't make it. And the survivors were Carl, Yaya, the models and the influencer, Dimitry, the Russian oligarch, Therese, the lady in the Vulcan, in the wheelchair, Paula, who's like the head of the, I guess, customer guest relations staff, Jarmo, the tech millionaire, ship mechanic. Oh, the ship mechanic Nelson. That makes sense. Dimitry accuses him of being one of the pirates, which Nelson says, "Well, you're racist. You're saying that because I'm black. That's why you're saying one of the pirates." And it's like, part is you like, because Dimitry gets a lot of screen time in part 2. And it's like, you never see Nelson. Like, we never saw Nelson until just now. But it's like, maybe we did, and we just didn't notice because he didn't have any dialogue or a lot of screen time. And so, like, you know, literally the definition of being marginalized, like marginalization. So it was like, that's racist, but also kind of understandable because, like, we didn't really see a lot of Nelson. I didn't even know Nelson existed. And then cleaning lady Abigail, they managed to escape to the island. Paula continues to order Abigail, but then when push comes to shove and it comes to survival skills, Abigail is the one who keeps catching the fish, and she's the only one who knows how to do anything, like cleaning the octopus, making a fire. Like, no one else has to do this because they've all lived a privileged life, first-class life, including Paula, which I thought was interesting. So she automatically assumes power. She becomes the ruler because she's like, without me, you guys are fucked. Like, you're not going to survive. And so Abigail ends up, so there's a lifeboat. And so she sleeps in the lifeboat, and she's like, she determines who can sleep with her in the lifeboat because it's nicer. You like, especially if it rains or if it storms, like, you're in a nice protected environment, shelter. Eventually she gets into a sexual relationship with our guy, Carl, which I've in exchange for food. So what was interesting about that is, like, Carl, remember back to part 1, Carl and Yaya are arguing about money and bickering about money. And Carl didn't like the idea that the strain of their finances was placed on him, even though he earns less. And so I think ultimately what happens here, when Carl initially is like, he goes to Yaya and is like, listen, it's nothing. I'm not going to do anything with her. I'm just going to sleep in the same lifeboat, and I'm not even going to kiss her. Like, I'm not going to do any of that. I wouldn't do that to you. And then we see that he ends up, like, they full blown. Well, although the one scene that we do, quote unquote, sex scene we see with them, I don't think they're having sex. It seems like a mutual masturbation type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just seems like you get yours, I get mine. Like, we're affecting each other, but it's not full. Yeah. And so Yaya gets jealous and ends up kissing Jarmo as a response, as retaliation, I guess. But it is, I think it's just, and Abigail, if you haven't seen it, like, the cleaning lady is she's on the older side. She's not Yaya's age, and she's not a model. So to give you kind of a context as to what is going on here. And so I think that's really just Carl's drawn to power and influence and skill. And so maybe that makes it easier for him to turn his back on Yaya and embrace Abigail, because he's not drawn to like this Yaya's lifestyle and Yaya's, I guess, superficiality. That was, I mean, that goes back to the opening, like the scene where they have the argument in the Uber, Carl and Yaya, and then they're in the hotel. And Carl's trying to explain to her, like, it's not about the money. And Yaya just keeps smiling and giggling. And like that would also drive me nuts. Because like I'm trying to have a serious conversation here and just keep laughing in my face. And then when he's in his bed and she comes in and she's like, this relationship is strictly business. It's just, you know, there's like, we're dating each other because of Instagram. It's just like, and I'm going to be a trophy wife. And he's like, I'm going to make you love me. And it's just like, and I guess, spoiler, I guess he does kind of make that happen, oddly enough, by his relationship with Abigail, because then you can see that Yaya is affected by it. Like it does bother her, because when they first get on the cruise and they're laying on the Shea Lounge and that crew member comes on and like disrobes for some reason, like just takes off his jumper, and he's so hairy and he's got a man bun. And I'm thinking to myself, come on, Carl, dude, like you're a model and this guy's like a crew member and he's just super hairy. Like I'm super hairy. That's not that's not hot. It's not sexy. And Yaya found it hot and sexy. And I was just like, I don't know what am I doing? So Yaya eventually decides to take a hike to the other side of the island, and Abigail volunteers to go with her, even though Carl's like, don't do it. And that's where they talk things out. And it seems like, you know, Yaya compliments Abigail for establishing a matriarchy. And it's like, okay, maybe things are going to turn out for the best. And then that's when they discover that they stumble upon like a beachside elevator and realize they've been stranded at a luxury. They're near a luxury resort, which we got a taste of, because Therese, who normally is wheelchair bound, is now like she's just kind of stuck in this like inflatable raft, and just has to sit there. And there's like a I don't know what you call it, merchant, vendor, a guy just selling things, like selling hats and trinkets and whatnot. You know, a guy just kind of strolls the beach and sells stuff like that. And so she flags him down, and he comes up and he's like trying to sell her stuff, and she just can only say 9 in the Vulcan. And so he takes off. And so Yaya is celebrating, and she starts talking about like, oh, things can go back to the way they were, you know, the way they were. I can go back to my job as a model. You can go back to being, you know, basically saying you can go back to your life as a lowly cleaning lady. Whereas I go back to the lap of luxury, you know, and I don't have to depend on you, and essentially all your power is gone. And so then that's when it slowly hits Abigail, like, I can't let this happen. Like, this friggin' sucks. Like, I can't go back to that. Like, here I'm a ruler. I dominate. I have power. Back there, I don't. Like, I'm you know, lower class, and I have to service all these asinine, ignorant people who are you know, take advantage of me and don't appreciate, aren't grateful, et cetera, et cetera. And so she picks, like, Yaya sits down on the beach and is like finally relieved and like, oh, it's finally going to go back to normal. And she has her back to Abigail, and Yaya is like, you know, why don't you come work for me? You can be my assistant. And that's when Abigail has the rock, as if she's about to attack Yaya. And once that line hits, like, you can work for me, you can be my assistant. That's like, they don't show it, but it's like she for sure took a rock to Yaya's dome. And then, yeah, that's when they cut to Carl frantically running through the jungle, running towards Yaya and Abigail on the beach. So great ending, just a good movie. I mean, there's a stretch where it's like, where is this going exactly? Not entirely sure. But ultimately, I'm just really pleasantly surprised. I mean, the opening scene where it's Carl at the audition, the model audition or whatever, and it's like all these like very skinny looking dudes. And you have the one guy so there's a cameraman, and then there's like a host with a tiny microphone. He's going around like interviewing all the male models. And then this was in the trailer too, but I just thought it was hilarious where it's like they have them all standing together, their shirts off and in jeans. And he's like, all right, now Balenciaga. Well, I don't even know how to fucking say it. Balenciaga? Balenciaga. How do I pronounce Balenciaga? How to pronounce Balenciaga? Balenciaga.
Balenciaga.
Yeah, Balenciaga. And so they all become very like tough looking and depressed and sad and kind of like, you know, steely eyed and brooding. And then he says H&M, and they all become like super like joyous and happy and laughing. And, you know, he just flips back and forth between the two. That was like that at that point when I saw that, I was like, all right, I think I'm going to be nice and happy with this one. So let's look at some trivia. Charlbi Dean, who played Yaya, this was crazy. I didn't learn this until I looked at the trivia after, you know, preparing this review. She unexpectedly died shortly after the film's release. No cause of death was released, but she succumbed to a lung infection. I guess she had lost her spleen years before in a car accident. She was only 32, which is crazy. I did notice in that one scene where they first are on the cruise ship when they first arrive and they're on the Shea Lounge, you could see a scar on her abdomen, and I thought they were going to explain that at some point, like, and that's where you would get like sympathy for her, like, oh, like maybe this would explain why she behaves the way she does. They never do, but it's the result of her splenectomy, which took place in 2009. So, very sad, but so the yacht scenes were shot on the Christina O, which is the former yacht of the Onassis family, as in Jackie Kennedy Onassis. Ever heard? They only took 9 days to shoot on it, cost a lot of money, and the shoot ended the day before another lockdown from COVID-19 came to effect. The director, Ruben Östlund, admits that if it happened a few days earlier, he doesn't know how they would have managed to finish the movie, which is crazy. Timing, dude. You know? It's, you know, sliding doors, right? The character Dimitry is modeled after Dimitry Rybolovlev. Oh boy. Rybolovlev. Oh, holler. A Russian oligarch who likewise made his fortune with fertilizer. He owns a super yacht and become world famous as the vendor of Da Vinci's Salvator Mundi in 2017 at a profit of an estimated $273 million. I like art. I can't imagine paying that much for a piece of art. I like for the stories, for the gram, it just doesn't seem worth it. But I'm not a zillionaire, so there you have it. In a 2022 interview with Vanity Fair, Ruben Östlund, the director, described his intent in defying the traditional approach to class characterizations. One idea I had was that I wanted to portray them all as nice. I didn't want to make them ignorant or mean, because I think that is maybe the conventional way we look at class. When we describe people on the bottom, they're genuine and generous. The rich people are egotistic and superficial. Didn't want to go down that road. And for the most part, he's correct, right? Like, I don't think anyone was really mean. I think they were just, if anything, unintentionally mean. Like, you know, not being more socially aware, more self-aware, because when you're that rich, people are just yesing you up and down, left and right. You know, they just do what you say because you have money, and they don't want to lose that possibility of getting some of that money. So that was understandable. I thought that, you know, it's a great approach to take. The polite English couple who turn out to be arms dealers are called Winston and Clementine, the names of Winston Churchill and his wife Clementine Churchill. Oh. Dolly de Leon, who plays Abigail, confirmed in interviews that Abigail did in fact kill Yaya with a rock at the conclusion, which I didn't. there was honestly no doubt in my mind. Seeing the expression on her face and the way she was gripping it, I was like, I don't know what it would take other than Carl saving Yaya at the last second, tackling Abigail. Like that, she was taking her down. There was no doubt in my mind. So the Triangle of Sadness, they mentioned it in the part one, like the opening scene where Carl's going through the modeling audition, where they I think they mentioned the Triangle of Sadness in that opening scene. I was just like, I was like, huh? The title refers to the little space between the eyebrows where frown lines are often formed, also known as the glabella. However, it could also apply to the love triangle that springs up between Yaya, Abigail, and Carl. Oh, okay. Could also refer to the three acts of the movie: Yaya and Carl, the yacht, and the island. So I dig that, and that ties everything nicely together. That carpet really tied the room together. What do the critics say? On Metacritic, the film had a weighted average score of 63 out of 100 based on 47 critics. Generally favorable reviews. On Rotten Tomatoes, 72% of critics, all critics, gave it a favorable review, which means 3.5 out of 5 stars. And they had an average rating of 7.2 out of 10. The top critics were not as generous. 59% of top critics gave it a favorable review with an average rating of 7 out of 10. Woof. What's up with those top critics? I don't know. It's so stuffy, dude. I view most top critics as like 1%ers, so I could see how they'd be upset with how this takes down the 1%ers. Or yeah. I would say yeah. I would go higher than that a little bit. I go towards all critics. I'd give it like a 7.3, 7.4. I might have did I give it an 8 on IMDb? Between a 7 and 8, I'd say on IMDb. I think that's where I'd put it. The critics' consensus is that Triangle of Sadness lacks the sharp edges of Östlund's earlier work, but this blackly humorous swipe at the obscenely affluent has its own rewards. Sharp edges. I gotta look. I mean, I haven't watched a lot of his other movies, so maybe I would need to watch those to get a better understanding of what they mean by sharp edges. But I mean, you could see, when when there's that big debate about capitalism versus communism. On the yacht, that's capitalism. On the island, that's communism. And you can see capitalism, there's a bit more, there are vices going on, there's a little more greed going on, there's excess, there's sin, right? Quote unquote sin. If you're going based from a religious standpoint, sloth and greed and opulence and extravagance and all that stuff, and how that causes discord between the three levels, right? It's like the super rich, the crew, that kind of the trickle down effect of the crew wanting the money, and then the janitorial staff that's like, this is like, we're just trying to live. And then versus the communism, where it's like everyone's on equal, even playing ground. But when given a choice, it's like most of those people prefer the capitalism. Audience, 70% of the audience gave it favorable reviews with an average rating of 3.6 out of 5. And I would put it, between 3.5 and 4, I'd say, closer to 4. The audience says, with an intriguing premise held back by an uneven execution, Triangle of Sadness has some sharp points as well as some lopsided angles. The friggin' puns on these people, dude. The puns, unbelievable. Uneven execution, lopsided angles. Okay, I could see that. 2.5 hours, very long runtime. They spent a hell of a lot of time with Carl and Yaya, and then it kind of gets away from Carl and Yaya for a lengthy period of time. So I think if you have like a do-over, or to like win over whatever naysayers or haters that are in the mix, maybe you would introduce maybe some more backstory with some of the other characters and not so much emphasis on Carl and Yaya. Yeah, I don't know, but that's it's Triangle of Sadness. I recommend it, dude. I think it's a good watch. It is a little on the long side, but I mean that one Captain's dinner scene alone really made it for me. And the island, it really, again, that might have been a little bit drawn out as well, but it was to make a bunch of points. Like you could see Like you have people of enormous wealth that are working hand in hand with people that have little to no wealth. And how the roles are reversed and the tables are turned. Is it shitting on capitalism? I guess, but it's also taking some jabs at communism. I mean, like when they're on the island, as much as we applaud Abigail for taking power and ruling, there is a certain degree of dictatorship there, right? Because it's like they're withholding. It gets to her head a little bit, withholding food, using sex to deliver food, that kind of thing. So I don't think it's really one over the other, I'd say, but I enjoyed it. More laughs than Cocaine Bear. Okay, that's enough.